Coming up on Lawmakers, Senator Vincent Fort opposes exemptions to the special local option sales tax that could help Atlanta fix its sewer system. Hunting and fishing could soon be constitutionally protected rights in Georgia. And a new proposal that could offer low-interest loans to teachers and nurses. Those stories and more are coming up next.
Live from Atlanta, this is Lawmakers for Monday, January 26th. Here are your hosts, Wandy Lawson and Gerald Bryant.
Good evening, everyone. Also on tonight's broadcast, House Education Chair Representative Bob Holmes talks about the state of Georgia's K-12 schools.
And the first shots are fired in the latest battle over tort reform, but our top story tonight, opposition to proposed sales tax exemptions.
Senator Vincent Fort announces his opposition to exemptions related to the proposed Atlanta municipal option sales tax that could help repair the city's failing sewer system. Chrissy Thrasher has more on this story. Chrissy.
In Wandy, the 1-cent sales tax would not apply to Atlanta hotels, motels, and car dealerships. And Senator Fort says that isn't fair. Senator Fort expresses his concern over proposed legislation that would help fund the repairs needed to fix Atlanta's aging sewer system.
Just recently, the City Council and the Mayor passed the largest water rate increases in the history of the city. During that time, there was much discussion about a sales tax referendum proposal that the city wanted in order to have a 1-cent sales tax referendum put on the ballot.
The senator says the problem is not who has to pay the 1-cent sales tax, but who doesn't. According to the proposal, certain businesses like hotels and car dealerships are excluded from paying the sales tax.
All of those folk, businesses, hotels, car dealers, and residents ought to pay the cost of the sales tax. They all ought to share in the pain. This is a painful process. Pocketbooks are being hit, and no one's pocketbook should be excluded.
If the exemption that we understand is being proposed were to be put into law for certain businesses, for the hospitality industry and the car rental industry, that would mean a burden of another $9 or $10 million right back on the ratepayers.
But there might be good news for those opposing these exemptions. Senator Eric Johnson, who is working with Atlanta Mayor Shirley Franklin on this legislation, explains.
We're moving very deliberatively to make sure that anything that we do on the exemptions doesn't harm the very competitive tourism business that attracts the tourists to Atlanta who then pay the sales tax. I have on my desk now a letter from the Atlanta Chamber of Commerce and the business community saying they support the removal of exemptions. The city of Atlanta supports the removal of exemptions. So my suspicion is that as the bill moves forward, we will do that.
And last week, Senator Fort wrote a letter to Atlanta Mayor Shirley Franklin expressing his opposition to the tax exemption. She has not yet responded. Reporting live, I'm Chrissy Thrasher for Lawmakers.
Thanks, Chrissy.
Meanwhile, Georgians are one step closer to voting on a constitutional amendment to preserve the state's tradition of hunting and fishing. Senate Resolution 563 is sponsored by President Pro Tem Eric Johnson.
And you may not think that this is a big threat, and neither was the right to bear arms 200 years ago. But there is a growing number of people who don't understand hunting, that don't understand the joy that we get from it, the family nature of the father and son going out together to the deer stand, or for the husband and wife and children to take to the boat and go fishing. There's some in this state that believe deer are endangered species, and someday a future legislature may ban deer hunting or ban dove hunting. They don't understand wildlife management and use of hunting.
We have currently in this state of Georgia 28 amendments under the Bill of Rights, and most of those have stood through the test of time. Suddenly we're getting in here and rolling out amendments to the Bill of Rights like they're, well, I'm not going to say what kind of paper, but we're rolling them out at an unprecedented rate. And we need to be careful because not everything needs to be a constitutional Bill of Rights. That is a very, very important right that we are granting the people of Georgia.
There seems to be an attempt to belittle this important process. Let me remind you of a couple of things. First, the people of Georgia like the constitutional amendment process. They understand a republic. They elect us to pass certain laws. but they like to be involved in some things, and this is one that they're going to want to appreciate being involved with. Second, everybody says there's not a threat. I admitted when I dropped this bill that there is not an immediate threat, but there could be next year, next decade, to your children and grandchildren.
An attempt to add hiking and canoeing to the resolution failed. Senate Resolution 563 passed by substitute. The vote was 51-3. If passed by the House and signed by the governor, Georgians could vote on the measure in November.
Representative Earl Ehrhart has introduced a bill that could affect the battle between the City of Atlanta and the North Druid Hills Golf Club. The club has come under fire from the city because it does not extend the same privileges to partners of gay or lesbian members as it does to the spouses of other members. Lawmakers Jesse Freeman has the story. Jesse.
In Wani, Georgia law does not explicitly prohibit discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation, but the City of Atlanta does. The city's Human Relations Commission has advised city leadership that the North Druid Hills Golf Club violates the city's discrimination ordinance because they do not extend spousal benefits to the partners of gay and lesbian members. The city has not yet decided to pursue a discrimination case, but a bill introduced by Representative Earl Ehrhart would make the city's ordinance unlawful. Ehrhart likens the city's policy to extortion.
What the bill I have will stop cold in its tracks is this type of extortion to try to force a specific social policy.
And while the club says it accepts gay members but only extends spousal benefits to legally married couples, and in Georgia, marriage is only legal between a man and a woman, Ehrhart says this bill is not about the issue of sexual orientation. It is about upholding the state's definition of marriage.
What you have in the case of the Druid Hills Country Club, or any country club in this situation, is this is not about gay or straight or anything else. It's about the marital status and the rules and regulations and bylaws of a club that you know going in.
If Ehrhart's bill is successful, it would prohibit local governments from sanctioning any private social organization that abides by the U.S. and Georgia constitutions. Earlier today, the bill was assigned to the House Governmental Affairs Committee. No word yet on when they will discuss it. Reporting live from the House chamber, I'm Jesse Freeman for Lawmakers.
Thanks so much, Jesse. Meanwhile, Senator Bill Stevens, one of the sponsors of the Georgia Defense of Marriage Act, says that if that measure becomes part of the Constitution, it would have no bearing on the North Druid Hills case.
It's my understanding that it's narrowly defined at just the legal definition of marriage, and beyond, I'm not an attorney and beyond a constitutional attorney, and beyond that, I don't know what the downstream ramifications would be. But it's narrowly defined simply at what is the legal definition of marriage in the state of Georgia. It's not targeted at any private club memberships or anything similar. It's patterned after what's happened in several states, the most recent of which was Ohio, where last week the governor of Ohio signed a similar measure into law, which is actually tougher than the one that we're proposing.
The Defense of Marriage Act, recognizing marriage in Georgia as only the union of a man and a woman, was introduced last week as a proposed state constitutional amendment. That means voters would have the final say in November.
This year's battle over tort reform began in the Senate today with votes to reassign tort reform bills to different committees. That action was initiated by Judiciary Committee Chairman Charlie Tanksley.
It's inappropriate at this time to circumvent the committee process to the extent that this is being done, particularly in view of the subject matter having been previously assigned. There is one bill that has been assigned to Judiciary, which likewise went to a different committee, and when I rise on that motion, it will be to recommit that bill back to the committee that dealt with it last year. I would like very much to have your support on this. I believe this is a matter of respecting the Senate and its acts, where there have not been any responses from the House on the subject matter yet. It's consistent with our subject matter design of committee systems, and it's consistent with my commitment to this Senate to do the best I can on legislation that's brought before me and have it duly considered by the Senate according to what I understand to be the sentiment of the people on this floor.
Tort reform basically is the idea of changing medical malpractice law in Georgia. Efforts to cap pain and suffering damages went nowhere in the legislature last year. Some characterize the issue as doctors versus lawyers. Senator Tanksley is an attorney. Among those opposing moving two tort reform bills to the Judiciary Committee is Senator Tom Price, a doctor.
If you ever want any of your bills to remain in the committee where you have discussed it with the leadership and the Committee on Assignments, you need to support the individuals who assign those bills. The senator from the 32nd stated that this was circumventing the process, and that's not the case. This is the process.
If you came down here to not debate issues, to just go through and be a senator and enjoy all the perks, I think you need to look for another line of work. We're here to make decisions. Tough decisions. We made a tough decision, and we'll make them again tomorrow and the next day and for 36 other days on where to assign these bills to committee. Don't override this process.
I believe that we need to get down to the nitty-gritty. And the nitty-gritty of this situation is, this is the doctors with the lawyers. This is about malpractice. And you can get up here and you can speak all you want to about legalese and talk about the Supreme Court. This is our ability to be able to sit in here and vote on something. We were denied that ability last year.
Now, the Senate did vote to move two of the tort reform bills to the Judiciary Committee, but a vote to reconsider that action could come first thing tomorrow morning.
A House Judiciary Subcommittee passed legislation today outlawing manufacturing or possessing methamphetamines in the presence of children. But this is not the governor's bill, which was engrossed in the House on the 14th. David Zelski joins us live with more on House Bill 1135. David.
Well, that's right, and Wandy, since the governor's bill, House Bill 1108, was engrossed, it can't be changed as it goes through the legislative process. So House Bill 1135, which passed in today's subcommittee, aims to clear up some of the language that has stalled the governor's bill.
What we've got this year, of course, the governor's original bill, and of course this is the chairman's bill, Chairman Bordeaux's bill that we took a look at today in a constructive dialogue on the methamphetamine issue, and the committee wanted to go ahead and put its fingerprint on it, and it has done that in the subcommittee process, and it'll go on to the full committee. We'll go ahead, the administration will go ahead, and after that, as that process is ongoing, and certainly after that process is concluded at the committee level, take a giant step back, look at it, and say, is this the best possible product that we can come together on and put forward and pass on behalf of Georgia's children?
Representative Tom Bordeaux chairs the House Judiciary Committee and also sponsors the new bill, which passed the subcommittee unanimously.
The bill, as the governor originally had it written, said that if a person has a tablet or a powder of methamphetamine in his pocket, small amount even, and a child is present, a 15-year-old is present, that in and of itself would be a separate felony, separate to merely possessing it, even though there's no endangerment of that minor. We cleaned up the language as they had intended for the language to actually read, so that it only is the manufacturing of the methamphetamine or the possession with the intent to manufacture the other substances.
Now, House Bill 1135 now goes to the full committee for a vote with the amendments which were made in today's subcommittee. Reporting live, I'm David Zelski for Lawmakers.
Thank you, David.
In other news, Senator Tom Price has a plan that could result in low-interest education loans for teachers and nurses. It includes the participation of a nonprofit corporation called EdSouth. Senator Price says his proposal would recruit and retain quality teachers and nurses for Georgia.
We're introducing a Senate resolution that will ask Governor Perdue to issue an executive order designating EdSouth's subsidiary, EdGeorgia, to provide an educational loan secondary market in the state of Georgia, and this designation is necessary pursuant to federal law and federal regulation. Once designated by the state, EdGeorgia will be able to apply for up to $125 million of private activity tax-exempt bond cap to provide Georgia's students, teachers, and nurses with lower-cost educational funding. This is at zero cost to taxpayers and zero cost to the state. EdGeorgia will offer a 2% interest rate reduction for Georgia teachers and administrators for continuing education and for new nursing students. These loans are in addition to and not in competition with the Georgia Student Financing Administration loans.
A spokesman for Governor Perdue says he is aware of the proposal and will give it every due consideration.
House Republicans today introduced two of Governor Sonny Perdue's education bills, one to change the way the state grades schools and a second to suspend driver's license for truant teens. Now, House Education Chair Representative Bob Holmes says he's prepared again this session to fight the governor's revisions to the education reform plan that was enacted under former Governor Roy Barnes. Representative Holmes says he favors input from local systems and an end to social promotion, but that the State Department of Education is not providing adequate information about how districts are assisting underachieving students or preparing them for the criterion-referenced competency test?
Well, I think we're going to have some of the same problems because when the governor talks about accountability, the problem I have is that they have yet to assess and to give us data concerning what the local school systems have done. For example, we have asked for data concerning the benchmarks that have been met in the phasing in of the reduction in pupil-teacher ratio, lowering the class size. And I asked the superintendent at the supplemental hearings, I asked the superintendent at the general hearings on the FY 205, and they still haven't given us the data. So my question is, how can you think about giving people greater flexibility and talk about accountability when you can't even tell us how they've done in the past over the last 3 years with hundreds of millions of dollars? Secondly, we have the issue relating to flexibility over the whole issue of the third grade test. Under House Bill 656 passed in 2000, we said that we're going to end social promotion, and that's a good idea. We said we were going to have the children to take the CRCT, we were going to identify them in the first grade, and then we're going to provide them with supportive assistance. They can hire graduate students, they can hire teachers from their schools or other schools, they can hire private tutorial firms. And then we discover, I got some data, the one piece of information that the superintendent has given me said that 189 children in DeKalb County, which is approaching 90,000 children in their school system, receive supportive assistance under Title I. That in Bibb County, 30 children did. In Muskogee County, 0 children did. So I'm saying, are these numbers for real? It seems to me that they're not doing their job. So if you're talking about accountability, you've got children who are going to take a test this spring to determine whether they go on to the 4th grade or not, then I'm not prepared to give any greater accountability to these local systems whom we don't know are doing their job. Those who have done the job, then yes, give them greater flexibility. If they haven't, they got to earn it.
In addition to education, you here in the Atlanta contingency also have the difficulty and the dilemma of trying to overcome the Atlanta city sewer problems. There's a number of, proposals out here on the table. I know Senator Fort has said that he favors the sales tax but does not like the exemptions that are currently being offered to hotels and car dealerships in the current legislation. I wonder how you would weigh in on the discussion of fixing Atlanta's sewers.
Well, I think that is one of the revenue generators that we ought to definitely consider and we ought to pass. But I agree with Senator Fort that we perhaps need to look at what in fact it will do if we give exemptions to different actors in the economic field here. And I guess I'm inclined to say that everyone should have to, if you will, bite the bullet and take some of the hit. And I'm not sure that one can justify exempting certain businesses and all of the property owners pay. So in my mind, we have to look at that aspect of it very closely. I think the concept is good because it is an exportable tax to a certain extent, at roughly 35%. So that means that what the bills are will be perhaps 1/3 less paid by citizens of the city of Atlanta.
The House today agreed to amend the law allowing public schools to receive electronic versions of textbooks. Representative Virgil Flood said the revisions would strengthen the measure.
And we're having a little difficulty. We might try to bring you that later. Meanwhile, in other news, Governor Perdue will host the next Saturday with Sunny, January 31st at Smyrna City Hall. About 24 constituents will have 5 minutes each to share their thoughts, discuss an issue, or ask the governor a question. Reservations will be accepted until 5 p.m. tomorrow evening on a first-come, first-served basis at 404-656-1776.
A consumer protection measure sponsored by the Secretary of State's office was approved by the House today. House Bill 472 requires that a background check be run on those who solicit for charitable contributions. Representative Barbara Bunn questioned whether companies could be counted on to have their employees fingerprinted.
Do you feel comfortable that the companies will police their own solicitation on these charitable contributions?
These were recommendations from the Department of the Audit, and then when you get into the other parts, so that with a greater enhancement on a better filing of their of what they're doing, yes, I do.
So there would be the enforcement would take care of any problem?
Well, we're enhancing the enforcement, plus we're also enhancing the background paperwork on exactly what these these companies that are doing solicitations, what they're doing.
So is it true then that if they are not policing properly, that action can be taken?
Yes, ma'am.
HB 472 could mark the first change to licensing for solicitors in 15 years. It passed the House by a vote of 162 to 8.
Legislation which would classify different levels of assisted living facilities was considered by the Senate Health and Human Services Committee today. Senator Renee Unterman, the author of the bill, explained the two levels of assisted living, and those who opposed the bill were given an opportunity to voice their concerns.
And that's basically what we're looking at, is that they're going to be well provided for. And that is the impetus for having different levels of care. Because you could go level 1 to level 2 and progress as you debilitate or you need extra attention. And then you can go to a nursing home.
You know, I come up here and every time we have this bill come up, I feel like the bad guy. And I feel like the state really should be up here defending what we're doing in the SOURCE program, because what we've worked for 10 years is to get people who don't need nursing home care in a level of care that they need. And that is working. I don't think any of the advocates sitting in this room will say that it isn't working. People are being taken care of in their homes or in the personal care homes or in hospitals, nursing homes, in all the settings that they need. And it's a very successful program.
The measure was tabled for further consideration at the next committee meeting.
The Senate Transportation Committee today approved Senate Bill 425, amending transportation funding language to reflect the change in the number of congressional districts from 11 to 13. The bill calls for exemption of interstates from the congressional funding formula, and by changing this language, the bill's sponsors say congressional districts will not be overburdened when working on large interstate projects. The bill was given a due pass and will move on to the full Senate for further consideration.
The death sentence of convicted murderer Willie James Hall was overturned today by the State Board of Pardons and Paroles. Hall was scheduled to die by lethal injection tomorrow night. He was convicted in 1988 of stabbing to death his estranged wife, Thelma Burns Hall. Hall's attorney asked the board to commute the sentence to life without parole, citing affidavits by 6 of the jurors saying that they would have chosen that sentence had the option been available at the time of Hall's convictions. Since the state reinstituted the death penalty in 1973, 46 individuals have asked the board for leniency. Hall is the 8th such prisoner to be granted clemency. Well, on Friday at budget hearing, State School Superintendent Kathy Cox went through the FY 2004-2005 budget for Georgia's education, the largest cut being an additional $380 million from the basic QBE formula. This is the money that goes straight to the school systems and provides the majority of school funding.
It is a grand total that you saw $126 million of it in the 04 supplemental, and now this 05 austerity reduction is an additional $253 million. I have no doubt that local systems, if they have any reserves, which many of them, most of them don't anymore, this will greatly affect that pot of money for them. I also have been hearing and seeing around the state movement on the part of local school systems already looking to possibly increase their millage because of the reduction in the amount of state QBE funds coming to them. And also, many school systems that I've talked to as we have prepared them for this, and we have been trying to prepare them for this since August, they are talking about layoffs. So it is a huge cut to what they are trying to do with students in their individual school systems.
Representative Jeanette Jameson later questioned these cuts, saying that cuts to this large to QBE funding could lead to local property tax hikes or even cuts to crucial school programs.
Georgia's low-income families could benefit from a bill that will be introduced in the Georgia General Assembly soon. Angelina Washington reports on matched savings accounts.
Individual Development Accounts, or IDAs, are match savings accounts designed to help low-income families, adults, and youth to save money to accumulate assets such as a home or a business. The bill was introduced in both 1998 and 2001 and was never adopted. It is now being pushed by a statewide collaboration to gain support. Members of the legislature believe IDAs will help people help themselves.
It provides a low-income working family a chance to own and not just owe.
Nancy Montoya of the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta explained the importance of IDAs in building and maintaining assets to help people out of poverty while financially educating them. Even individuals that never reach their ultimate goals are still successful in that they are able to save and maintain money in an account. Her home in 6 months.
For me, it has provided a home as well as a career and a mission.
Many IDA programs in Georgia are funded by grants and private donations, which allots them to a 75% tax credit. However, state funds would create more revenue for IDAs.
So we are definitely sure that we need to invest this money in our people so that the future of the state and families are secure.
The Georgia Alliance IDA bill will be introduced to the legislature in early February. I'm Angelina Washington for Lawmakers.
Today at the Capitol, legislators had the opportunity to enjoy massages while learning more about alternative medicine. Lawmaker Samantha Cheshire has more on this story.
Today at the Capitol was CAM Day 2004, a program started to educate people on alternative medicine.
We're here today with CAMA, the Complementary Alternative Medical Association, to teach the legislators and visitors about the advantages of complementary alternative medicine, and at the same time we teach our CAMA members about the legislative process.
CAMA is a nonprofit organization dedicated to educating people about natural healing and their healthcare choices. Reflexology is one example of alternative therapy.
When you work on the hands, ears, and feet, you're indirectly working with the rest of the body, that way to balance it, which helps the improvement of the circulation, balancing of the organs and glands of the body.
Other alternative medicines featured at CAM Day include hypnosis, massage therapy, acupuncture, and chiropractic care. In addition to educating consumers on their health care options, CAMA also hopes to create awareness and support for House Bill 1040.
House Bill 1040 is the state planning for increased consumer access bill, and what that does, it increases consumer access to complementary alternative medicine.
House Bill 1040 was introduced during the final day of the 2003 session. It is currently in the State Planning and Community Affairs Committee. I'm Samantha Cheshire for Lawmakers.
And coming up tomorrow on Lawmakers, Chrissy Thrasher talks with Marcia Moore, the new head of the Office of School Readiness, now known as Bright from the Start. We'll have that story and more tomorrow night on Lawmakers. For those of you with access to the internet, you can watch Lawmakers online. Visit our website at gpb.org. Lawmakers programs are streamed live, then archived on our site every night that we're on the air. Stay tuned for Find. That program is next here on Georgia Public Broadcasting.
And also tomorrow, more on that electronic textbook legislation. That's our broadcast for this, the 6th day of the Georgia General Assembly. Thanks for joining us. I'm Gerald Bryant.
And I'm Nwandi Lawson. For everyone here at Lawmakers, good night.